Today, pop goes the Evergrande. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Well, latest post covering finance and property news. Well, Hong Kong court case number HCCW 220/2022 might turn out to be one of the most significant events of the year, because after months of uncertainty, mega property developer China Evergrande Group received a liquidation order, triggering a daunting process to carve up the biggest casualty of a property crisis that's upending the world's second largest economy. Evergrande, by the way, started back in 1996, and it relied on heavy borrowing to fuel its growth. It became the largest dollar debt borrower among its peers, and for a time, the country's biggest developer by sales. But the company ran into trouble refinancing its debts back in 2020 after the China government began to clamp down on excess leverage in the property sector. In December 2021, it defaulted on its bonds, triggered protracted negotiations with creditors to hammer out a restructuring plan, and, well, muddled through. Actually, of course, it's interesting to see that the Chinese government is trying to get property prices under control, and they have actually dropped significantly. Not many Western governments would be thinking of even trying to do that. Now, an investor in one of the Evergrande units, Topshine Global Limited, filed a lawsuit back in June 2022 seeking to wind up the company. The judge in the case, Linda Chan, repeatedly adjourned proceedings to give Evergrande time to seal its restructuring deal, but in September, the debt overhaul plan stalled because the CEO was placed under police control on suspicion of committing crimes. In fact, Chan's patience finally ran out on January 29th when she issued the winding up order in the High Court. Judge Chan still left open the possibility for a restructuring arrangement even after a wind-up, but bondholders are pretty frustrated. The numbers, of course, are eye-watering. Evergrande has amassed more than $300 billion of liabilities during China's debt-fueled property boom, while the builder was valued at just $275 million on Monday. Before trading, its shares were halted. That's down more than 99% from its peak. And there are around $17 billion worth of Evergrande dollar bonds. Evergrande's collapse is by far the largest in a crisis that has dragged down China's economic growth and led to a record spate of defaults by developers. The liquidation actually will be a test of the legal reach of Hong Kong courts into China, where most of Evergrande's assets reside. Any new management will also need to navigate asset sales in an industry lacking liquidity and confidence. But it remains to be seen whether the judgment is actually accepted in mainland China. Most of Evergrande's projects are operated by local units, which may be hard for the offshore liquidator to seize, and construction work, housing delivery, and other activities in the mainland will likely continue while the process unfolds. More than a dozen Chinese developers are already facing prolonged winding up hearings, including mid-sized players Logan Group and Kaiser Group Holdings. So how the Evergrande judgment is implemented will be closely watched for any precedent. Before the ruling, Hong Kong's court had issued at least 3 winding up orders for other Chinese builders since the crisis began in 2021, but none came close to Evergrande in complexity, asset size, and the number of stakeholders. And there are also few signs that the liquidation of smaller peers like Jiangnan International Group and Jianggo Justice International, a unit of Jianggo Group, are moving forward much. The liquidation will, of course, be closely watched by global investors who have pulled billions of dollars from mainland China, in part due to concerns over an uneven playing field for foreign capital, as President Xi tightens the Communist Party's grip on the economy. Policymakers may have to balance competing priorities as they try to shore up investor confidence while ensuring unfinished homes get built and the financial system remains resilient to the property industry woes. The question now is the potential fallout, which could hit property confidence in China further. It's already in the doldrums, with property sales down 40% year on year, And at one stage, by the way, property represented about 1/3 of total Chinese GDP. As Goldman said recently, despite the fact that the property market has entered the third year of a current downturn after peaking in 2021, many questions remain unanswered in terms of when will the market bottom, at what levels will property sales stabilize, and how much damage will the ongoing house price decline eventually inflict on household consumption. This, on top of complications from COVID scarring effects and increased geopolitical tensions, makes it difficult for policymakers to calibrate the size and form of optimal easing needed. Take completions as an example. Property completions increased 16% in 2023 as the government mandated developers to finish pre-sold apartments. But at some point, there should be a completion cliff after most pre-sold apartments are completed and the new starts pipeline runs dry. The question is, when will that completion cliff arrive? And apart from the completion cliff, which is difficult to pin down, imagine the uncertainty regarding other questions, such as the impact of house price declines on household consumption, especially when academic research and other analysis shows that Chinese households tend to save more when house prices increase in order to put aside enough down payments for additional property purchases. Assuming a 3-year construction cycle, sales of under construction residential property 3 years ago implies that completions will likely hold up until 2024, but fall sharply in 2025 and 2026, Goldman said. Now, of course, Australia is a producer of iron ore, and China, and of course Evergrande, is a major consumer of steel. Citi, before the Evergrande news, tipped iron ore price to be around $150 based on the recent Beijing pledge to provide further economic support, but that might now be over-optimistic. Evergrande's liquidation could also spill over into the shadow banking system and test the veracity of statements of assets and liabilities. It may be nothing, but it could be something big and black swan looking, even though markets have had 2 years to prepare for this news. And while Evergrande failed to reach agreement with its creditors, there's been a glimmer of hope for investors with the restructure agreement for Sonic China Holdings Limited in November. Beijing has increasingly sought to put a floor to the crisis, rolling out ever more measures to revive home sales and to provide liquidity to debt-laden developers. So the market should focus on the good companies that have weathered through this worst ever credit down cycle, said Jenny Zheng, Chief Investment Officer for Asia Fixed Income at Alliance Global Investors. Actually, Evergrande's weight is not that considerable, either in the physical market or the capital market. We should focus on the survivors, she said. The macroeconomic impact should be limited, as a liquidation itself is unlikely to exert more pressures on the battered property sector, said Gary Eng, senior economist at Naxos SA. However, it will worsen sentiment as investors will be worried that there will be a snowball effect on other pending cases. Evergrande will actively communicate with the liquidator and coordinate on the related processes, said the Chief Executive Officer, Swan on Monday. The company has made all efforts possible and is sorry for the winding up order, he said in a written statement, which didn't mention whether it might appeal. The firm will seek to ensure stability for its onshore operations and push forward home delivery, according to the statement. So, it's too soon to know whether this is a significant event or not. It was a long time coming, so in theory, many should have prepared. But of course, the question is, will they have? And to me, the question of blowback into the Australian economy and also the shadow banking sector in China are a little unknown at the moment, so they are worth watching. Evergrande's story is not yet, in my mind, over. Now, if you're buying your home in Sydney's contentious market, you don't need to stand alone. This is the time you need to have Edwin Almeida from Ribbon Property Consultants standing alongside you. Buying a property is both challenging and adversarial. The vendor has a professional on their side. Emotions run high, price discovery and price transparency are hard to find, and then there's the wasted time and financial investments that you make. Edwin understands your needs, so why not engage a licensed professional to stand alongside you? With RPC, you know you have experience, knowledge, and master negotiators looking after your best interests. So shoot Ribbon an email at info@ribbonproperty.com.au. And if you use the promo code DFAWTW/Martin, you can get a 10% discount offer. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.